Just, don't knock it till you've tried it. Research can be super interesting, meaningful, innovative. It's really, really a lovely field and it has so much to offer. And I think people don't give it enough credit. So I think, the more you know, the more interesting it becomes. Yes, it might not be for everyone, but even if you do go into clinical counseling, educational, you still have to do a research project. And, a lot of academics who end up teaching the clinical modules, the counseling modules, all of them take a step back from their practice and they are mainly in research and in academia. So, yeah, I think just be open to it, attend webinars, talks if you can, find out a little bit more, but it really is a lovely field and I'm very passionate about it. And I hope that you guys will get a little bit more passion for it too after watching this interview.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I am so excited. I have Ariana here. She is into research psychology. We have met on LinkedIn. She has passion for research psychology, and I thought she's one of the best people that I could invite just to share about her journey in research psychology, but hopefully to also share some knowledge, experience that can help you as you carve your path within the field of research psychology. Ariana, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. So just a little bit about me to start it off.
Yes,
Um,
please.
yeah, so I'm originally from Joburg. I did my high school there, Crawford Lone Hill, and pretty much after that, I headed over to Pretoria to do my undergrad at Tux, did my honors at Tux as well, and then I landed up my master's in research psychology at Wits. And I'm currently doing this interview from the Northwest, so I've hopped around a little bit.
Wow.
But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Awesome. And at the Northwest, you are actually doing your internship now in research psychology.
Yes, I am. It's at a research unit based in the health sciences faculty. It's called the Africa Unit for Transdisciplinary Research. And yeah, I've been there for a couple months now. I started back in March, so I've had quite a bit of on-the-go experience so far. I've learned a lot, and yeah, it's been really good so far and a really good experience.
Okay. You said you are in the Northwest. Are you doing your research within the Northwest University? Is it within the institute?
Yes, it's a part of the university and it's a research unit. So they have got quite a broad focus. The whole essence of it is on this idea of transdisciplinary research. So it's research that cuts any kind of boundary you can think. We've got positive psychologists, we've got people focusing on biostatistics, epidemiology of non-communicable diseases, sustainability and community development, public health. So it's got a really broad research focus, and you get to work on some really interesting projects in a whole different bunch of fields. And yeah, so it is in the university, and their main focus is on research. They do student supervision, so they are still in the teaching and learning side, but a big part of it is focused on research.
Awesome. Awesome. Very interesting. I think I'll come back to that later. But before we get into that, I want to get into at least a bit of a background of how you got to follow the field of psychology, because that's the question that we get a lot. At what point did you know that psychology is your career path or a career option that you want to follow?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's maybe a bit different to a lot of people who get into psychology. I think a lot of people, they know from quite a young age already that they are very set on becoming a psychologist. It's always what they wanted to do. But for me, in high school, when it's coming to the time we have to start doing university applications, thinking where you want to go, I didn't really have a very good idea about that. So I didn't actually end up starting out in psychology. I applied to Tux and I was actually studying languages. So it's a BA languages and it was in the humanities department. So all your extra modules that you take, I had a couple different things and one of them was psychology because I thought that's interesting. It's maybe something I'd like to learn about and do. So I started the degree, you go to all your classes, and, eventually as it got a little bit down the line, I started to realize that I was really, really interested in psychology. I was really enjoying the modules. It was something that I was good at. And, just speaking to my family a bit about it, and where I'm sort of heading in the future. And basically, we all sort of landed on the idea that maybe I should change my majors to psychology instead, just because, it was something I was enjoying. It maybe has better career prospects. Yeah, so I decided, I think it was probably at the end of my first year or maybe sometime in the second year, that I switched just to a BA General. I was lucky enough that I didn't have to redo a year or anything like that because all the modules were the same. And yeah, so I sort of set my sights on that. And at that stage, I didn't know actually a lot about psychology. I didn't know that, there were all these different types of registrations that you could do. I hadn't heard about research psychologists at all. So in my mind, I was sort of thinking, okay, I've decided to go the psychology route and I might as well just, land on the one thing I know, let's go clinical. So that was sort of just the idea in my head I had that, come honors, I'll set my sights on that and we'll go from there. But then it was quite early in my honors year, actually, that I realized actually I'm not cut out to be a clinical psychologist. It's not actually what I want to do. And it's also when I actually heard about research and research psychology and that was an option. And it was quite early and around that point that then I actually realized, this is the path I want to go. I'm better suited to be a research psychologist. I'm more interested in it. And yeah, it just sort of snowballed from there.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching up to this point. And I wanted to take just a quick break just to reflect about what Ariana was talking about. I hope you heard her when she said she only got to know about psychology categories at an honors level. And I want to share with you that that's actually common across all the psychology students. And I want us to break the pattern. I want us to break this pattern. So if you like this video, I want you to make sure that you click on the like button just below this video. Click on the like button. But most importantly, I want you to share this video with as many people as possible, particularly those in the psychology field. Share the video. Make sure that we break the pattern. Let people know about psychology early. If you hear somebody, they might be in your class, ask them, do you know about the channel? Do you know about the information about psychology? And share the video. Share with as many people as possible. Make sure that people are informed. If people you hear about them, they want to know about psychology, share the channel, refer them to different videos that we have. And particularly, there's a video I've done with Dr. Machimana. She is a research psychologist working at the One Mill. I think she's one of the most experienced psychologists in the research field that I've come across, and she shares one of the most informative information that is going to help you in your journey in research psychology. Check that video out, which I've done with Dr. Machiman. It's showing on your screen. Check it out and make sure that you watch it in addition to this video of Ariana. Let's go back to the interview, and I hope you continue enjoying it. Listen to the end as Ariana will continue sharing very informative information that you need about your journey in psychology. Let's go back to the
from there.
Yeah. So basically, what you are saying, you only started to know about the categories in psychology around at honors level. And
Yes.
what is it about clinical in particular that made you not want to or feel like it's not fit for you?
So I think the honors level was the first time that you start to get a bit more into, the specific aspects of psychology. So you have a module on psychopathology, you have a module on therapeutic techniques, and you have your research modules as well. So I think it was just attending the courses, seeing what it really is about on a little bit more of a practical level, in the sense that you start looking at case studies, you start looking at the diagnostic manual, those sorts of things, that you get a little bit of a better picture about what it's actually about, and what kind of a person you need to be to really flourish in those roles. So I think for me, it was just, attending those classes, seeing what it's really about, as opposed to what you think it's about in your head. And I just thought, based on who I am, my strengths, that research was a much better suited role for me, particularly.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. And because I actually wanted to ask you, out of all the fields in psychology, why research? Did you ever consider other fields like your counseling, industrial? Uh, did you ever think of them, or was it just either clinical or research?
Yeah, so I didn't consider any other fields. Like I said, it was just sort of that brief idea in my head that because I only really knew about clinical, I was like, okay, I'm changing to psychology, so I might as well just, go full on for it and do that. But I think I knew that research was best for me. I don't know what it was about it. I think it was just I really enjoyed the modules. I enjoyed the type of work we were doing. From the honors, we also started to do a research proposal project where we actually conceptualized a study and, wrote the whole rationale, method, everything like that. And so I think it just became quite clear, and everything sort of just fell together quite nicely, that I knew at that stage, when we were now looking at master's applications and things like that, that research would be the best route for me. So I didn't apply to any other stream or anything like that. I sort of just knew, it's going to be research psychology. I'm going to look at what are the requirements for the master's applications, and then take it from there.
So I guess you are not one of those students who think research is the most difficult module.
No, I know a lot of people think that, but I really, really enjoy it. And it's just something about it that I think clicks for me, because it's something that you have a lot of freedom with, you have a lot of creativity, and just a lot of leeway, because you can do a project on almost anything. And it's really about making all those puzzle pieces fit together. So it's almost like this problem that you need to try and solve in, the best possible way. And that for me is, I think, something I'm quite good at and something I find quite interesting to be able to do. And yeah, so I think it draws on a lot of my skills. I think, when I was originally planning to go the languages route, I thought, maybe I'll become like a writer, author one day, something like that. So writing is something I really enjoy. It's something I'm quite good at. And, that is a huge part of research, which maybe I think if people aren't so strong in that, that's partly why they find it maybe not as interesting or quite difficult. But
Mhm.
yeah, for me, it's really one of my favorite parts about research.
Awesome, awesome. And tell me, now that you decided to follow research at honors level, which institute did you apply to, and what was the process for you to get into the masters?
So the thing about the master's applications, and I think this is true for most of the specializations, the applications open and close fairly early in the year. So with, the other categories like clinical and counseling, I know that a lot of the applications, they involve like a personal reflection. So that is something that, it comes from you. It's quite easy to get it on a page. But for the research master's degrees, I think basically all of them require some form of research proposal, whether it was your honors project to be submitted or an entirely new concept proposal that you come up with. that is one of the main requirements for the master's submission, the initial application. So for me, I had not, done a proposal before. I hadn't conceptualized a study before. So to try and do the applications that were closing in, April, May at the beginning of your honors year, where you don't actually really know how to put together a good research proposal yet, for me, I just felt like the timelines were way too tight. So the only place that I actually ended up applying to was to WITS for their master's program, because their deadline was, I think, in September of my honors year. So it was purely because of that, the requirements of it, that you need to show this, proposal piece of writing to show that you understand, the research process, what goes into a study, what elements of a study need to work together. That's why I ended up only applying to WITS. Then just to answer about the process a little bit. So the initial process, I think like all categories, again, you have to fill out a departmental application form that's online, which is, I think, just the basic information, the study degree, all of that sort of thing. And then they had another application form, which had essay type questions. So it asked some things like, what research experience do you have, or training, just the basics, things like that. If you've ever been a research assistant, you could write about that, or any other sort of work experience, just to explain a bit what your familiarity is with the field. And then the thing I liked about the WITS application was they had some practical questions. So another thing they asked, for example, was to relate a recent movie or book that you've seen or read, or otherwise a news story in South Africa that deals with some kind of psychosocial issue. And the question was basically, in 500 words, analyze this issue, or explain how the themes of the book or movie relate to psychological concepts. So for me, I thought that was quite interesting, and it's quite a different way to show that you understand psychology, the discipline, and can critically engage with a form of writing or media, and explain some key psychological concepts. So yeah, it was a couple of questions like that, relating your other major subjects in your third year to psychology. So it was really quite, critical thinking, practical application questions that were quite interesting for me. And then for shortlisted candidates, after that initial application process, there was then some follow-up questions, which were motivating why you wanted to join that specific program. And then another sort of case study practical application question, where they gave you a scenario of a research problem, and you had to explain, also in just a few words, a quantitative and a qualitative approach that you would use to explore one of the research problems from the case study.
Awesome. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, so I mean, that was basically it. So for the WITS, that's the only one I can speak to. It was those two processes. There wasn't any interview involved. I know some master's applications do also have an interview stage, but for my year, the one I did, it just didn't end up being that way. But yeah, I think those are the basic elements. It's really about the research method, showing that you understand the core concepts of research methodology. What is a quantitative study? What is a qualitative study? Can you express those thoughts? Can you apply that knowledge then to practical scenarios? And yeah.
So it seems like it was mainly write-up from what I'm hearing. And you are emphasizing that you need to know the key concept. You only mention qualitative and quantity, but somebody might be listening and still be interested and eager to hear more. What other key concept will you say are important for somebody either to prepare for psychology selection or anything in psychology research in particular?
So I think one of the other main things would be to work on your synthesizing skills. So I think in research, that's quite a big thing. So it happens at all the stages, being able to read various articles in the literature and be able to synthesize, the core aspects of those articles, the core arguments. You need those skills when you are putting together a study to be able to link your problem you want to explore to the aims of a paper, to the way that you investigate it, and to the kind of answer that you come up with at the end. So I think that's quite a big thing, to be able to work on that skill of seeing a lot of information, seeing the patterns in that information, and then being able to tell a story or explain it in a way that's digestible or easy for anyone to understand. And yeah, I think one of the other things is that critical thinking skills. I think it comes through in the questions that ask about real world topics like, a current event happening in the country, or even a book or movie that relates to a psychosocial issue. It's being informed about what kinds of things those are, how they can maybe be analyzed or explained, why they're happening. So I think being quite up to date with current events and that sort of knowledge is quite important in the research world, especially if it's applied research that you're working with that aims to solve, or at least investigate real world problems. So
Okay.
I think, yeah.
And thank you for that. And was it a 2-day process? How long was it?
So the initial application, you had to obviously complete all the questions and everything and submit it by the deadline, which I think, as I said, was around September. Then there was a couple weeks, I think, in between that process for the committee to review all the applications and shortlist candidates. And then it was, I think, a few weeks after I then received an email from one of the individuals on the selection committee, which then had a link to the follow-up questions about your motivation for the program and the case study exercise. And then I think you were given a week or so to complete and submit those questions. And then following that, I think it must have been also a couple weeks to a month's time where you then received communication on the outcome of your application.
Okay, so was everything done remotely, or did you have to go to campus?
No, it was all remote. I'm not sure if that might have been partly due to the fact that we were still sort of in the COVID times. I was applying in 2021 for the 2022 intake. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure if that had any effect on it or for what reason, but yeah, the whole process was remote.
Okay, and obviously then it means you might not know how many people were part of that process, the candidates who applied. But do you remember? I think because it's 2 years ago, how many people were selected for your master's class in research?
So as far as I know, the WITS cohort is one of the biggest. In my year, there were 12 of us who were full-time students, and WITS also offers the degree part-time. So you do your coursework modules in year one and then your research in year two. So what ends up happening is some of the students who, if they, for example, decide that they are going to carry over a module for their second year, you might have some of the part-time students from the previous cohort joining in your classes. But in general, it's around 12 to 15 students, I would say.
Okay. And in terms of coursework, what's the focus? I mean, people who do psychology, counseling, clinical, and all that, they do different aspects. They do therapy, they do theories in psychology. What do you guys do in class for that course year, that year?
So it was very, very practical, which is really what I enjoyed about the master's year of study, because it was for the first time that you actually start doing research. So at WITS, we had only 3 modules. The one was a qualitative methods module. Then we had a quantitative module, which was called, I think it was something like multivariate analysis or multivariate statistics, something like that, which was then split into the statistics part of it, which we explored, the more sophisticated statistics, working with the statistics software, those sorts of things. And then the other half of the module was called article analysis, which was basically learning how to read an article that was quantitative, analyze it, critique it, see what they did right, what they did wrong, what forms a good article, how you should structure it, what information is crucial to be in there, that sort of thing. Which is actually, that article analysis process is also something that professionals do in academia. You may be asked to analyze an article in that same way, and there's a whole process and structure to it that you then follow, and you do a write-up of the critique and things like that. And then in the second semester, we had a module which was called Research in Context. So this module at WITS is really unique, and it's really interesting because they get a research consultancy company that has collected some form of data, and they have some research questions they want to explore. And as the students in the class, you then get to work with that actual real world data and form a study based on the problems that they want to explore. So we had very interesting data that was collected on some psychological concepts, and the target of the study, it was, the participants were all from different countries in Africa, and it was actually orphaned children. So we had all this data, it was a very big data set, and all these different variables, from different demographic variables to all these different psychological measures that they get the data on. And we then had to almost work backwards and formulate the research proposal, formulate the project budget, formulate timelines, and conceptualize a study around this real world data, which then moved into actually performing the analyses that we've outlined in our proposal, doing the data, and actually writing in an article format the final write-up to present these results. So that was very, very interesting. It's all very, very practical. Even in the qualitative module that we did, we also went and collected data, and we analyzed it using qualitative methods, obviously, and also did a paper write-up at the end. So it's very, very interesting. You really learn a lot. And, it's even something to put on your CV, that when you are applying then for internships, for example, and they ask you, what experience do you have with research? You can then tell them that actually in my master's classes, we did practical research activities that have exposed me to, XYZ, all these different methods. So it was very, very interesting and very, very useful.
I totally agree, and very practical indeed. But before I scare the people, you mentioned something about stats. I want to understand that, and maybe just to provide context. Does it mean somebody who needs to follow, or who might be interested, or at least succeed in research psychology, they need to have a background of statistics or mathematics, or is it something that you will learn in class because you are only doing applied stats within the research context?
So you don't need to have a background in statistics. And I think one of the nicest things about quantitative methods in psychology is that you are not sitting there with, your calculator in hand doing the statistics from scratch. We work with different software. So in psychology, you usually use SPSS. And the basic thing that you're learning how to do is to tell the program what you want. So it's not so much being able to calculate or know the correct formula or understand the theory behind the stats. It's about knowing, okay, I want to perform this kind of statistic because I've got this kind of data. And in order to tell the program to do that, I need to know to click here, here, and here. And then it's going to run the process for me. And then what I need to know is how to interpret the numbers that come out. And that's exactly what they teach you how to do. So you don't need a background in statistics. You don't need to be a math whiz or anything like that. It's a really intuitive process. And, if you can almost learn the steps, understand why you're using a particular statistic, which is all based on the theory anyway, then you're going to be hundreds.
So I will not enter into a exam room one day and I get an expression and say, apply the standard deviation formula, where I need to remember the formula. Is it the square root of?
No,
So you're not. Okay,
it's not going to be anything like that.
okay, okay, okay,
At least from my experience, it's not going to be.
okay. No, no, I know. I mean, I've had many people that are very afraid of stats, and I think erroneously so. I think they confuse the statistics in BSc with the one that you do in research psychology. So I just wanted to clear it. These are not the same thing, you know. Here it's more applied, and I mean, the only calculations I think, if I remember, they were very basic, where you calculate the mode, you calculate the median, you calculate, those are basic calculations. But at least, yeah, people should not be that scared.
Yeah.
And now you are done with your research and you need to apply for internship. What are the options in terms of internship? Are they available? Are they there? Did you struggle? You know, what options do people have if they have to do the internships?
Mhm. So I've actually got a post regarding this on my LinkedIn that I started to explain a little bit. The unfortunate reality with research psychology is that there are a lot fewer internship sites than for the other categories. And specifically, there's a lot fewer accredited sites. So the HPCSA does have a document that explains which are the accredited sites with some contact information and stuff like that. But some of it is out of date because the sites depend on funding, resources for any given year. So whether they can actually accommodate an intern or interns might vary. But there are still quite a few, and there are more and more places that aren't accredited that are willing to accommodate interns. So I applied to 2 institutes. The one was accredited, and it's in Lenasia in Johannesburg. So that one is the UNISA Institute for Social and Health Sciences. And I think they are quite an established research internship site. And they basically they are a research institute, so they have got the set program that the interns follow. Since it's accredited, you don't need to worry about creating the program or anything like that. You just apply there, and if you're accepted, then you follow the internship year. You work on the different projects that they have going, and then you will be able to register with the HPCSA if you've successfully completed the year. Then the second place that I applied to, which is where I am currently based now, is at the Northwest University, author, the Africa Unit for Transdisciplinary Health Research. They are not an accredited site, but they also routinely accommodate research psychology interns. So it's basically almost the same process. The only difference is that you need to submit a tailored program for approval before you can register as an intern research psychologist.
Awesome, awesome. And people should not be scared, whether the place is accredited or not. You will get support on how to develop your tailored internship program. But I wanted to also, I'm just showing your LinkedIn page. They must check it out for the information that we are sharing about, so that they can be able to get information about research psychology. I mean, I found it very helpful and informative, and hence we're having this interview. So please make sure that you check that page. You can see it on the screen. Check it out. And Ariana also referred to a list from the Health Profession Council about the internship sites. I've done a video on that. Please check it out as well. But like you say, the outdated. What I usually do, I recommend people to call the sites. At least what HPCSA will do, will give you the name, will give you the contacts. Make sure that you contact them and just follow up about the requirements and if they still offer the internship and what is the arrangement, that are created or not. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. But now let's get into the internship itself. And I think, I mean, you are still fresh about that in terms of your memory, because you are completing your internship now. What does it entail? What does intern in research psychology do? Typical work, Monday to Friday. What do you do during your 40 hours of internship?
So I think it's one of the things that I really like about research psychology, because you are always going to be doing something different. So how it works is you're not going to get one project and work on it from start to finish. What typically happens is the site will have a couple projects running, and you will be a part of, let's say, the project management, a lot of work organizing maybe an event or workshop, or contacting people regarding getting quotes for various things related to research, organizing to set up feedback meetings for participants, things like that for one project. Then maybe on another project, it's in the data collection phase. So you'll go into the field, you'll interact with participants, you'll collect data, you'll see exactly how it is, out there, outside of the office. Maybe on another project, you'll work on writing part of a research article. So you'll do literature reviews. You will look at interpreting the findings. Maybe there's a PhD or a master's student that's busy with research that you will then help out as maybe a co-coder for their interviews, things like that. So it really differs every day, and it changes, and it's very dynamic. So from my experience just at author, there are a lot of different projects that almost come to life in a very quick period of time, that they didn't exist when you got there, but then a couple months down the line, someone's had an idea, or there's a new student, or something happens that then you get a brand new project with a brand new scope, focus area that you can then also become involved in. So it's very interesting. It keeps you on your toes, and there's a lot of variety. So I don't think it's something that ever gets boring. Yeah.
Okay, I get that. I get it. And thank you for that. And I want to go back to the Northwest University. You mentioned that you are doing internship there. How many people do they select for the internship? And what was the process for you to apply? Was it just like applying for a job and you get selected, or was the process of the selection? And how many people do they take per year for interns in research?
So they typically take 2 interns. So I'm working with a colleague who completed their master's at the Northwest University, and they are my fellow intern. I know also with the UNISA Institute, because I did go through that selection process as well, they also accommodate 2 research interns. So basically, it was very similar to master's applications or job applications. They put out an advertisement for the posts with the general criteria and the documents that you have to fill out for the application. So for I'll start with the UNISA application. They asked for, the normal details that you would provide, and then they also required a letter of motivation stating why you want to work at the institute and what makes you a good fit for it, basically. And then they also required a piece of writing evidence. So that could be, for example, your master's research proposal, or any other sort of academic piece of research writing that you have, just to demonstrate your skills in research and all of those things. And that formed the initial paper application. Then the process moved on to an interview phase. So the shortlisted candidates were invited to interview at the Institute in Lenasia. And there were a panel of individuals who worked at the Institute that were conducting the interview. And basically, they just asked questions about your research experience, whether you prefer quantitative or qualitative research, what skills do you have in those areas, all sorts of things like that, what projects that the Institute does that you might be interested in working on if you are selected, and just different questions like that. Then at author at the Northwest, it was similar. The paper application, you had to fill out again the details about your master's, your dissertation title, all those things. And then you also had to provide a piece of research writing evidence. So again, the proposal or something like that, along with your transcripts and all those formal documents. They didn't require a motivation letter. It was just the sort of standard questions. And then again, they then shortlisted candidates to interview. That was a virtual interview just because it is usually people applying from different provinces. And that was very similar. They asked some, questions: who you are, what are your research interests, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years, all of those sorts of things. But the processes were quite similar. And then, they give you feedback. So I was lucky enough to be accepted for both posts. I just decided for myself to go for the Northwest one. But they typically phone you with the outcome, and then you get started on just the formal, documents, contracts, things like that. And that's pretty much the process.
Yeah, no, awesome. I mean, I could hear when you speak that, I mean, the passion is there, and I understand why they will select you for both posts. Clearly, I'm sure your passion comes through when you speak about it and also in your writing and submission. So I'm very excited. Thank you for what you are sharing. And you got selected, and have you written your board exam yet, or are you still planning to write it?
So I'm planning to write in the February examination next year. The HPCSA stipulates that you can apply and write the boards within the last 3 months of your internship if you've already completed your master's and including your dissertation. The applications opened in November and they open until December. So I'm going to be applying hopefully to write for the February examination.
Okay. You said you are finishing in March, your internship.
Yes, it'll finish the end of February, beginning of March.
Okay, okay. All the best with that. But I mean, already I think, I mean, you are going to ace it. I could hear.
Thank you.
The way you have invested in it. And so you write the board exam in Feb. And what's your plan in terms of career path, post internship?
So I want to write the board exams. I want to officially be a registered research psychologist. And the next step for me is PhD. I'm looking into topics now, conceptualizing a project. So that's just the planning stage for that is in motion. And I'm hoping that next year I will be able to apply for a PhD and be accepted. And so that will hopefully be the next 3 years, what they'll look like for me.
And do you want to take it full time, or you want to still be working on the side part time?
I'm hoping to do a full-time degree. Just I think because it is already, at minimum a 3-year process, and I think the quicker that it can be done, the better. To have that, degree to your name. So I will have to see how it all pans out, but that is the plan.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, you need to add to the people with PhDs in the country. There's still a huge gap. All the best with that. Obviously, your life change when you do PhD. People say your life stops until you complete it. But all the best with that. I think you'll really enjoy it. I think it's something that is worth the process. But somebody might be there who might not want to follow the PhD route. They just want to do the internship and go to work. I'm sure in your journey, perhaps you might have explored opportunities for research. Where can somebody work if they complete their research? Where can they go? Where can they apply? What kind of jobs can they do?
There are actually a lot of options out there. And one of the things that I think appeals to a lot of people is that you don't necessarily need to do an internship even to apply for these jobs. So it definitely helps to get a year of work experience. And obviously, there's a really big push for people to do the internship so they can become registered research psychologists because there are so few registered research psychologists out there. But it's a really broad field that gives you a lot of opportunities. You can work in academia if that is the route you want to go to become a lecturer and work within different universities or even private colleges and institutions. But if that's not for you, then you could also go work at marketing companies. They are looking a lot right now for people with a background in psychology because a lot of marketing is about that human behavior, interacting, knowing what people want. So you can become a market researcher for different companies, and I've seen a lot of posts advertised that are looking for people with a master's degree in research or psychology with that kind of background. If you don't want to do that route, you can work at some commercial companies. I've seen some companies that are in, I think, the makeup industry that they are looking for researchers to come on board, again for similar reasons, because they are aiming to, sell their product to people, and you can work within that field to look at the, analysis of the consumer behavior and those sorts of things. You can also work at different NGOs. There are also a few that I've seen advertised job positions in different parts of the country. They are looking particularly for researchers to do a lot of field work, for example. So I think there's quite a few places that are interested in things like HIV and AIDS. There's also a few positions I've seen that are doing LGBTQ research, and they're looking for people to join who have got that research background to join the team as research assistants or field workers or things like that. You can also get jobs in government. Things like Statistics South Africa, they do need researchers, particularly if you are stronger in the quantitative skills. I've even seen a post in the Western Cape to, have a government position there where you do social research to look at the different problems that are of interest on the country level. There's a ton of stuff. So there really are a lot of options. Also, research consultancy companies. So these are companies that they literally hire researchers to do work for companies on their behalf. So if there is a business that wants to find out about something, whether it's with their employees or just something that's of interest to them, they can then hire a research consultancy team to gather the data, conceptualize the project, do the analyses, write up the reports or the policy briefs or things like that. So there is really a lot of variety. I think it's just about knowing where to look at these different places and taking a chance on the applications, because I think even if the sort of requirements doesn't state their research psychology degree, a lot of the core skills and the experience that you get and the knowledge is exactly what they're looking for. So yeah, there's really a lot of options.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I think, yeah, clearly you have shared a lot of options that they can consider. And as we come to our conclusion, I mean, I looked at your page and I was curious, what led you to start and putting those posts about the research psychology? What informed that?
So, from my experience, I think people really do not know a lot about research psychology. In my very first post, I'm open and I share that I only found out about it in my honors year. I didn't know about it either. So it's something that I was just really passionate about, to be able to spread the word and give people some information about it, because it's really such a great field and I really love it, and I am really passionate about the work that I'm doing. And I think it's really important for other people to know that it is out there, it's an option, and it's not necessarily lesser than any other kind of psychology. It's really a valid, interesting, and necessary field. And yeah, so I just really wanted to share that with people and also give them some information that is sometimes quite difficult to find, especially if you're looking for, specific requirements or documents or procedures. It can be really difficult to get that information. So just to make the process a little bit easier for people who are wanting to go into the field.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And obviously, and you are right, I mean, there's limited information out there about research psychology. And there are people who will be watching this video and they're still hesitant whether to follow it or not. What tips can you give them, or any words of advice to psychology students out there might not know much about psychology research, or research in psychology, or they might be interested but still undecided? What advice can you give them, or some tips that you can give them?
So I think the one thing about undergrad and honors psychology courses and the modules specifically on research, they are very, very limited and a bit superficial. And I don't think people realize when they go through their undergraduate and early postgraduate studies that there are so many more different methods, ways to collect data, different analysis techniques, different kinds of research that you can do and different topics that you can do it on. So I think you don't necessarily see that in your studies. It's only really when you get to masters and sort of beyond that, that you really get a taste of the different kinds of research that you can do. And it is so interesting and so broad. I mean, there are methods that they are new, they're popping up, they're being developed, that I think a lot of people would be very interested in, especially if, the whole reason that they are drawn to psychology is because they want to help people or interact with them, or uplift communities and things like that, because there are all these different ways that you can do that through research that I don't think people necessarily know about. So if I had to give advice to any students who want to know more, or are thinking about research psychology but are not entirely sure, there are a lot of different webinars that researchers host that explain some of the methods they're doing, that talk about some of the projects they've worked on. There was a very interesting series that I think it was from researchers in the Western Cape that they spoke about their research that uses photo voice, which is, on a very basic level, the participants that they work with, they give them cameras or phones, and the participants take pictures of things that are meaningful to them, that relate to the topic of the research, and that actually becomes your data. It's these like photographs that people have taken themselves of things that are
Wow.
incredibly meaningful to them. And, that's something you don't learn about in undergrad or honors. So I think looking for those webinars, attending them, just hearing a little bit more about what people are actually doing in the real world, in practice, gives you really a much better idea of what the options are and, what your future in research psychology could potentially look like.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Ariana. I really appreciate. Thank you for all the insights that you have shared with us. And I believe that many who watch this will benefit a lot from this. And I encourage them that they check out your page. I would also put the link below this video that they check it out and learn a lot about research, because I think I totally agree with you. The information is very limited, and you are basically echoing the same sentiments that I think Dr. Machia, and I did a video with her. She's one of the most experienced researchers as well at 1 mil, who shared that people don't know about the research psychology, and it's one of the field that I mean, the opportunities are there and people need to grab them. And I mean, there are only few institutes that offer the accredited research psychology, which also explains why only few people follow it. But I think awareness for me is one of the disadvantage. Most people don't know much about it. We know other categories, particularly clinical, ed psych, counseling, industrial, but not much about research. So I really appreciate you and thank you for your time. Any last word that you might want to share with anybody in psychology, those who are doing the internship next day who are starting, any last words, any words of advice, any tips, anything that you can share with them before we go?
I think just, don't knock it till you've tried it. Research can be super interesting, meaningful, innovative. It's really, really a lovely field and it has so much to offer. And I think people don't give it enough credit. So I think, the more you know, the more interesting it becomes. Yes, it might not be for everyone, but even if you do go into clinical counseling, educational, you still have to do a research project. And, a lot of academics who end up teaching the clinical modules, the counseling modules, all of them take a step back from their practice and they are mainly in research and in academia. So, yeah, I think just be open to it, attend webinars, talks if you can, find out a little bit more, but it really is a lovely field and I'm very passionate about it. And I hope that you guys will get a little bit more passion for it too after watching this interview.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ariana. I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best as you complete your internship and with the board exam. I'm very certain that all will go well. And I will be meeting you next year, the psychologist, the research psychologist.
Yes, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Okay, keep well. Thank you.